What's up, War Report family? Your guy Ike Jones back with another morning drop. This morning, we're talking about the departure of Alum Flanigan to the portal. How is Auburn basketball going to replace that production on the court? Let's get straight into it. Y'all know how we do, War Report style. Let's drop it on them.
You are now listening to the War Report. Drop.
On a Wednesday morning, Wednesday, May the 10th, we are talking a little Auburn basketball. Morning drop sponsored by rogueshop.com. You guys make sure you head over to the Rogue Shop and get your purchase on rogueshop.com using code REPORT for America's #1 online dispensary. Y'all make sure y'all check out our guys at the Rogue Shop. Always doing great work, great customer service, all the things. If you have any anxiety about Auburn basketball, now is the time. To get yourself hooked up with a little Rogue Shop. While you're in here, make sure you're sharing the video so we can get more people involved in the conversation. We appreciate all the shares. But Mike G, let's talk a little Auburn basketball today. Alum Flanigan has decided, finally, not unexpectedly, but finally, to hit the transfer portal as a graduate transfer.
Yeah, we talked about this on the Mike Mack and Memes podcast. I believe B dropped that this morning. I was a little taken back by this. I thought it was, I thought it was pro or return to Auburn.
I did not. That's fair. Yeah,
I did not see the transfer portal factoring into his decision. So we know that his dad is going to Ole Miss, and is he going to Ole Miss to play with his dad? That question is out there, but he didn't immediately state his intention upon transfer. So that makes me wonder, again, is there something going on internally with Alum Flanigan where he feels like it's in his best interest to move on? I know that they're bringing in Cheney Johnson and Denver Jones as wings. And, was there a reduced role in the future for him? It just feels like for a guy who was an Auburn guy from the beginning, this is an odd move, I think. Now, he will be a graduate transfer. Mm-hmm. So no restrictions applied to him. He can do what he wants and go where he wants, certainly. But I just can't help but wonder if in the remake of this, was there a conversation with Alum Flanigan about what his role would be in this last year? Because he's got one more. If he wants to stay in college, he's got one more year to make his mark if he wants to go into the NBA draft. But the G League is an option. Obviously, overseas is an option, for him, I guess, if he wants to develop even more. I just thought the transfer portal would be the last of his picks.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think that it's interesting that he chose to transfer. I did think that it was more likely that he would go pro, but I did feel like the longer that this kind of went on, the less likely it was that he was going to be returning to Auburn. I think the interesting thing for me in a lot of these, and this is kind of the scenario with a lot of these, like Jay Will is another guy who has not firmly announced what his intentions are. He's still listed on the roster on the website. He's graduated recently. And then the Janai Broom situation, all of those things are just putting me in this place where I'm like, what are we doing with the basketball thing right now? And there's so many guys, and so many is relative, like 3 guys on a roster of, or in a rotation that's probably going to go 10 deep. But that's, listen, 30% of your roster right now that you intend to play. At that point in time, Flanigan now gone, so now only 20%. But 2 of the 10 guys that you really want to play, you don't really know what their status is for next year. And so it puts you in this kind of holding position. And I feel like we might have missed out on some transfer wing players waiting for Alum Flanigan to make a decision. So my question is, do you think that Coach Pearl and company the entire time knew Flanigan wasn't coming back? They just didn't say anything, and they were just aggressively going after other guys knowing this was going to happen? Or did Alum Flanigan hold that roster spot hostage until he graduated?
I believe it's likely that he held the roster spot hostage because, like, if he wanted to come back, what were they going to do, right? Like, you're not going to not have him back. You're not kicking him off the team, right? If he wanted to return, he would be here,
right?
And from their aspect, they just want to know what he's going to do. What are you going to do so we know what we're going to do? And, they started bringing in guys. There may have reached a point, Ike, where they say, all right, listen, we got to make moves. So if you're not going to tell us what you're going to do, we got to make moves in anticipation of worst case scenario, which is you leaving us high and dry.
Right.
So, I heard some things about team chemistry and, other things that may have factored into this decision for Alan Flanigan to leave Auburn. Ultimately, Bruce is not going to say a bad thing about any of his guys. Right. But I thought it was telling, and I'll go back to the NCAA tournament post game after they lost to Houston. Right. You and I were there, and Coach Pearl said something that it came off a little crass to me. But he said, listen, I want these guys to be proud of what they accomplished, but I have high standards.
Right.
And I just wonder if some of these guys didn't take that comment a little personally. As if, wait, so we don't meet your standards, or like, how much of this are you putting on us, coach? Now, throughout the season, on our show, we've debated decision-making from a coaching standpoint, what's on players, what's on coaches. I wonder if there's an idea out there that more of it was on coaching than players. Again, that's pure speculation on my part. That's not based on any inside information. That's just me thinking out loud based on what was said publicly. Right. There was a lot of disappointment about where this team finished, and the coach did not exactly give them a ringing endorsement, in my opinion, after the game. So in his mind, he might have been thinking, I need to tear this thing down and start to rebuild a bit. And if you are part of that current team that is going to be rebuilt, maybe you take that a little personally.
Right.
So, if he feels like he can go, so my question, I guess, to you would be, is Alan Flanigan a guaranteed starter at most Power 5 programs walking through?
Good question.
He's now in the transfer portal.
Ooh, really good question. I think it depends on what situation he goes to.
Cambridge got significant time at Arizona State.
Yeah,
he played a lot.
I don't know, man. That's a really good question. Would Flan start at most program? I think it just depends on what program he goes to, right? Like
if he goes to Ole Miss, for example, where's that?
Well, see, I don't even know what Ole Miss's roster looks like right now, right? But like, so they, God, that's a good question, man. I have to look at what their roster is composed of right now and whether or not they have somebody in their wing positions that would be a better fit for them. That is a really great question. I have to go look at rosters to see really what it looks like for those other places. But I think it's going to be hit or miss with Alan Flanigan, man. As much as I liked him as a player, and I think that he's a talented guy, he does have issues, right? Like he has some issues with shot selection. He has some issues with turning the ball over that he's got to get better. And that actually makes me, you asking that question makes me rethink my thought process on Alan Flanigan completely.
Yeah,
if you had not asked me that, I'd been like, man, I think we're going to miss Alan. But like, are there better wings out there in the country? The answer to that is absolutely yes.
Yeah, for sure.
But are there better wings on this Auburn program? The answer to that is absolutely no, right? Like, I think that a guy like Chris Moore,
or the incoming better than him, is it?
Well, see, that's the thing. The incoming thing. The incoming thing, we talked about this a little bit before we started the show. The Cheney Johnson thing is interesting to me. I don't like him at a 3.
Okay.
He is a 6'6", 6'7" guy who has the size of a 3. From looking at his tape, they didn't use him in a guard type position. He played a lot of post, and he has some decent post games. So my question would be whether or not Cheney was just playing out of position. Because there's a friend of mine, really good friend of mine. I don't know if you know Joe. You know Joe Clark, the guy who used to in the rap group with me when we were coming
Yeah,
anyway,
I remember Joe.
Joe 6'7", right? He is a 6'7" dude, but Joe plays like a guard, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because he was 6'7" in high school, they always had him in the post. And every team he ever played on, he was one of the tallest guys. So everybody wanted him to go to the post all the time, right? Is Cheney Johnson one of those types of guys who, because he was playing at UAH and he's one of the tallest guys on the team, they're like, we need you in the post. But he's really a guard, right? And so he just never got the opportunity to show the guard stuff because the team he was playing on wanted him to play the post. That's what I wonder about with Cheney Johnson. Like, is he a guy who's really a guard at 6'7", but they needed him in the post, and Auburn's not going to need him in the post, so he's going to get an opportunity to play out on the wing a little bit more. Hopefully it is that, because if that's the case, then we're going to be able to play a little bit bigger than what I would assume that we could with so many guards that are 6'4" and below on this team.
Yeah.
So in my mind, losing 6'5", 6'6" Alan Flanigan is going to hurt your ability to do a lot of things in the rebounding and defensive side. But if Cheney Johnson can move his feet well on the perimeter and he can shoot effectively and drive effectively from the wing spot, then you're in a different place, right? Like you can go with your guards up front. You can play Cheney at the 3. And if Jay Will comes back, you can have him at the 4. That way you're going 6'1", 6'2" at your point guard. You're going 6'2", 6 to 6'4" at your 2 guard, depending on who you start. And then you're going 6'6", 6'8", and then 6'10". Way different starting lineup right there if you have that going. Or Chris Moore coming in 6'6", and then 6'7", 6'7", 6'6" coming behind him with Cheney Johnson. It's a way different proposition. So if Cheney Johnson can play the 3, I think I'm a lot more comfortable with where Auburn is basketball wise. If he can't, then you need another bigger guy. And I still wonder what the plan is at the 3 spot right now with it. Listen, Matthew Cleveland gone. Tyson, the kid from Texas Tech, gone.
Well, Cheney Johnson and Leo Berman are still on this team.
Yeah, but they're 6'1" and 6'4".
That's what they got.
Yeah.
So to your point, we asked Brandy last night, and I don't want to dissuade anybody from going to listen to the podcast, but who her dream, like what do you feel like we need to get?
Mm-hmm.
And she's disappointed if Bruce doesn't go out and get at least 2 more guys, right?
Okay.
Need 2 more guys. Now, I'll let you guys listen to the podcast about who those guys were, but she went down a list of people that she felt like would be on her dream list to come in. I just feel like maybe if Allen was dragging his feet a little bit, that at some point you have to start to plan.
Right.
And we know from private conversations we've had with players and coaches, like the question gets asked, hey, what you going to do?
Right.
Right. Or they'll ask players about other players. Hey, do you know what this person is going to do? Right.
Have you talked to them? Have you heard anything?
Yeah, because now with NIL and essentially what is free agency in college sports, more players are playing some of this close to the vest, almost like they're pro athletes.
Yeah.
Right. So because it's not in their best interest to state out loud, especially if it's NIL money they're leveraging or like who knows what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's more like contract negotiations.
Yeah, it is really we know Jarquez Hunter has an agent.
Yeah.
He's got an agent, Ike. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out for Alan Flanigan, whether this is the right decision, because we talk about the portal and kids jumping in the portal. And what doesn't get talked about enough when it comes to the portal is that it doesn't work out for a lot of the kids who decide to jump in. It doesn't work out. So, like, at the end of the day, is this going to work out for him? Is this the best decision for him? We don't know. We don't know just yet.
Yet to be seen. And again, you raise a really great question as to whether or not how many destinations are out there for Alan Flanigan to really get the type of prime time minutes that he really wants. And he wants to be kind of more of a featured portion of whomever's offense. So the question is, where can he go to be able to get that? The difference between basketball and football, though, is that he could go to a mid-major, to a program that's not in the Power 5 and still have good pro aspirations. Now, his NIL money might not be as good,
right?
But he can go somewhere that's not necessarily a Power 5 program and still be able to put up the kind of minutes that he wants. So he's got some work to do to figure out whether or not there is a good situation out there in college basketball that will allow him to be the type of player that he wants to be. So the heat is on for Alan Flanigan, but if he wants to relieve the heat, Harmon Mechanical might be a place that he can go, only if he's in the Auburn area, though, right? So if he's not in the Auburn area anymore, he won't have the opportunity to use these services. But if you are, you can take advantage of that. Harmon Mechanical Heating and Air is there when you need air. Hit up Harmon Mechanical at harmonmechanical.com, and they can come out and do an estimate for you to know what things you need to get done for your HVAC system in these summer days that are coming upon us. The summer heat is going to be crazy this summer. Harmon Mechanical might be the place for you to hit up to get yourself together. 334-219-0717 is the number to set up an appointment. Let them know the War Report sent you. Harmon Mechanical, there when you need air. All right. we are here for you all to get your frustrations vented, to talk about your hopeful sunshine pumping, whatever it is that you want to do. Now's the time to do that. While you're here, make sure that you like the video and subscribe to the channel. But we are going to go to the comment section to see what you all are marinating on with the best fans of Auburn sports there are out here in the country, the ones right here in the War Report chat. Green Name Gang checking in. AU Alum 94 says, figured Allen was gone when dad left. You want to go G League, fair enough, but transfer to another school? Come on, man.
Yeah, the transfer, I don't, like I said, it just leaves me with this weird feeling. This feels like a weird transfer, man. You know, so I mean, the Bowles transfer didn't feel like a weird transfer. It just felt like it didn't really feel that weird. This feels weird. Now, listen, both kids got their degrees, and I think that should be applauded. 100%. Both of these guys got their degrees, and any kid that gets their degree and decides to move on, I'm all about it. TJ Finley got his degree, supported. Bo got his degree. You know, Alan Flanigan is getting his degree. These are Auburn men forever. But it doesn't change that this feels weird.
Yeah, it absolutely will feel weird to see Alan Flanigan in some other uniform at some point in time in his collegiate career, if that's what ends up happening and he doesn't go through pro. Haley jumps in and asks, what's the bet on him going to Ole Miss? This is a good question. I think this is highly speculated that this is where he's going to go because that's where his dad went. But I don't know the answer to this question, right? Like there were talks of, you know, him and his dad not, you know, seeing eye to eye on some things. And so I don't know whether or not Ole Miss is going to be the destination. It would seem to me if Ole Miss is the place that he was going to go, like he might as well just say, I'm entering my name in the transfer portal, but put a no contact tag on him because I'm going to Ole Miss, bro. Like, we're not even going to play around with this. But he is taking visits to other places besides Ole Miss. So it leads me to believe that Ole Miss is on his list, but not necessarily the place. And don't forget, Eric Musselman basically reaches out to everybody who enters the transfer portal. So he will likely get a call from Eric Musselman. And he's an Arkansas guy. He's from Arkansas.
Yeah, so Eric Musselman is out here speed dating in the portal for sure.
So we'll see whether or not he wants to go back home.
So, Arkansas, I'm sorry, Ole Miss. I mean, I just don't know. Is playing for his dad this important in his last year?
I don't know. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if that's a big deal for him or not.
Yeah, I just don't. It just feels like it shouldn't be, right?
Yeah. Go
where you're going to get some tape, and maybe going to play for his dad will guarantee that. So if that is the reasoning,
yeah, I mean, I don't listen. Is Chris Beard going to be calling the shots on the rotation, or is his dad, right? Like, if his dad's there, like, how much influence is he actually going to have on whether or not Allen plays? I don't know the answer to that. So, but yes, to your point, you got to go somewhere where you know you're going to go get minutes because this is the last chance that you've got to put this on the court on film.
Right.
Chris Sanders jumps in. Shout out to Al. Thought he would go pro for sure. Agreeing with your sentiments.
Yeah, I mean, it can't. I know we're belaboring the point, at this point, but this feels weird, man. This feels like this move might be about things that are not going right internally. Now, it's been a very slow portal season for Auburn basketball. It was very slow, and we've been bemoaning how slow it was, and just wondering what's going on there. Like, are guys looking at the program and not seeing things they like?
Right.
We'll see, but ultimately it'll be up to what Bruce decides, what he puts together on the court, and see if he can put together a serviceable team, out of the guys that are left, right? Because we still don't quite know what Jani Broome is doing, if I'm correct, right? So that's a huge one. And from what I understand, he did not get invited to the combine. There is some speculation that he will be should be returning and was just testing the waters. But Cardwell and Broome returning would be huge, I think. Williams, Chris Moore, as the forwards returning. They're targeting Mitchell Holmes. So we'll see how that goes. And Berman, I believe, is going on a scholarship.
Mm-hmm. So most likely. I think Bruce Pearl said last year that if he had the scholarship to give him, he would have given it to him a scholarship before. So
yeah. And Cheney Johnson is still here, right? Yeah. So does his game take the next level?
Need it.
Right. LeBaron Philon decommitting was very disappointing. For a lot of people.
I'll agree.
that was something that that was a player a lot of people were looking forward to seeing play here. So how do they fill those spots, man? I mean, you need a serviceable point guard. We know Wendell Green is out. He kind of stated that there might have been some discontent on his part as well too. His dad, gave us the vague LOL on Bruce's post. I just wonder if all this points to something that's happening internally with that program.
We will definitely find out soon enough what the plan is post Alan Flanigan. Missed that these were super chats. Apologize. French T. Taylor says, any word on the offensive tackle Markel Bell and MLC? Speaking of Montana, Lamonius Craig. Have not heard anything new on any of those developments.
Right.
But
Lamonius Craig, I do not expect it to come to Auburn.
I feel like it's unlikely at this point.
Yeah, very unlikely at this point, right? Markel Bell, man, like, listen, how many linemen can you add in one offseason? Right? Like
all of them is to the answer.
Oh my goodness. They have done the work in the portal at offensive line. And I think with Peyton Thorne coming in and being your potential quarterback, you need that, right? But we looked at the numbers. Under pressure, he's 29%. He's the strategy will be blitz him, get pressure on him, and make him beat you with his arm. The numbers show sometimes he can do that, and sometimes he can make some costly mistakes. So, providing protection for a quarterback like Peyton Thorne, and Robbie as well too, will mean the difference between maybe 5-6 percentage points in completion percentage. So keep bringing in alignment. I agree. You got to find a combination that works.
Right.
For these quarterbacks.
It's important, man. It's important to make sure that you've got that solidified. Lisa Daniel with another super chat here. Sounds like the cat has something to say. Talking about the cat in the background.
Oh, yeah. We kicked him out. We evicted him.
Let's see here. Chris Sanders says Chris Moore is likely the 3. I don't dislike this. Listen, Simo is a great energy guy. He's going to do a lot of the things defensively and hustle wise on the boards that you need from your 3 spot. He was the starter at the beginning of last season. So I think that this is a probability of them having Simo come in and play starting minutes at the 3. You've got enough scoring with Aiden Holloway coming in, Denver Jones coming in. I am really big on what Trey Donaldson brings to this team as a kind of true point guard on both ends of the floor. And if you have KD Johnson step up and score, you got him. If Jani Broome comes back, scoring, post defense, all that sort of thing. So you have elements of a good team if everybody comes back. But if they don't, we've got some work to do specifically in the post, because I don't really know where you go if you lose Jay Will and or Jani.
Right. Agreed. I'm not a big Chris Moore fan, but again, for these kids that are returning, hopefully his game, we see the next level of his game. Yeah. Certainly. He seemed a little turnover prone last season when he would get inexplicable turnovers at times.
And it was really more so after the injury, right? Like when he came back from the injury,
shoulder injury, right?
He was super hesitant. He just didn't seem to have the same just definitive, I'm gonna go and make this move, when he early in the season he was playing well. When he injured his shoulder and he came back, everything seemed to be really hesitant for him. He came on a little bit when we got into the tournament at the end there. He definitely was a defensive presence that we needed. But to your point, him being tentative in there, basketball's not a game where there really aren't any sports where you can be tentative. But if you're not playing with instinct and passion, it's hard for you to be good and play at a high level when the athletes around you or you're playing against are so good.
Right.
You just kind of have to trust it and go with it. AU Alum 94 jumps back in. Agreed, Mike G. This is really disappointing. Always rooted for this legacy kid. All the ups and downs. This feels like a bad divorce.
I mean, listen, nobody said anything negative publicly. Mm-hmm. So I want to make that clear. It just feels weird. It just feels weird to me. The transfer portal option feels weird. If he were going pro, I would definitely not have this feeling. Right. But going to play for another school, like seeing him in somebody else's jersey uniform, man, it's crazy.
Chris Sanders jumps in. I'd be okay with Flan dropping 30 against us in a loss for whatever team he's on.
He would probably get a standing ovation from our crowd.
Yeah, if Flan had a really great game and they still lost, our fans would be happy for Flan and then happy that he lost as well. Both of those things can definitely happen at the same time. Chris jumps back in and says college basketball desperately needs more floor spacing. So just talking about the ability to shoot from the outside, especially if you got a guy like Jani Broome who works well in the post, you need the ability to space the floor for him to be most effective down there and him being able to pass well out of the double team. So I agree with this comment wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Christian jumps in. Glad Allen is trying something different. I hope Jalen Williams does the same if the portal is still open and if he goes pro. So Jay Will has graduated, so portal is not a limiting factor for him at all. He can do what he wants to do. Interesting here, though, that you want Jalen Williams to transfer or try something different.
Yeah, I thought he really started to come on last season. I thought he started to find himself as a scorer, as a more confident shooter. And it would be, to me, it would be a luxury to have him back. Because it did feel like his game was already going to the next level, right? And I would love to see him continue it here at Auburn. So, Jay Will is another interesting one that has some options here. But again, what is his role going to be? Has he sat down and talked with his coach about it? And do they feel confident that that's the direction, right, that is going to be best for his pro prospects?
Right.
Because these guys are running out of time, Mike, to make their mark.
Yeah, this is it for him. This is his last year to make it happen. Or
I asked him
something else with his life.
I asked him, after the loss to Houston, and I mean, he kind of, I wouldn't say he snapped back at me, but he kind of was like, hey man, listen, we're not done. We're not necessarily done. And I thought it was a foregone conclusion that these guys would probably just go test the waters at the pro level. And he was just like, no, and we could all still return. Now it's not panning out that way right now, but he's got some options. And I have the same question for him, Ike, that I have for Flan. If he transfers to another school, is he a starter walking in the door at another Power 5 program?
So I mean, it's a valid and very good question to ask. Again, it depends on how those rosters are composed, but it's a very good question to ask. Christian Crawford jumps back in. Florida looks like a good place for Flan. This is interesting, right? Because Todd Golden used to be on the staff here at Auburn. Would that be a play? And they lost quite a bit this offseason from guys declaring to go pro and transferring from that team. I could see Alan Flanigan potentially playing at Florida as far as how their roster is composed and how they want to play ball. And, Todd Golden's an analytics guy, so he would figure out whether or not it made sense for his roster composition. But that'd be an interesting landing spot, I think, for Alan Flanigan.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Florida has been kind of one of those middling teams in the SEC, right? Like they're always
the last few years, they definitely have.
Yeah.
They've been
good,
not great.
Yeah, and they're always, you worry about them when you have to play them.
For sure.
You worry about when you have to play them, but they haven't made any noise in the conference in quite some time. So, again, maybe that's a good spot. Maybe that's a good place to go, that type of program.
Yeah. AU Alum 94 asks, has Flannan ever dropped 30? So
I think he's had a 30-point game. I don't
know what his career high is. I'm not looking at his stats, so I have no idea.
Yeah,
we'll end it off on this one because I think this is a good one too. Can we talk about Coach Harris and the portal class she built? So speaking of Auburn women's basketball, she's putting together a nice collection of new talent for the team. Lost quite a bit of productivity with Koulibaly deciding to hit the portal, as well as Carissa Richardson, two of the higher performing people. Romy Levy hit the portal, right? So like a lot of the players that were crucial pieces of last year's team no longer on that team, but did a really great job of replacing those players in the portal this offseason. So definitely kudos to Coach Harris for the effort that she and her staff did with getting more quality players to come in. I'm really going to be interested to see how this team comes together next year with so many new pieces, but a lot of young and really good pieces that are coming in as far as freshmen and second-year players that bloomed in small spots last year. So kudos to them, man. I'm a big fan of Coach Harris and the job that she's doing with the women's basketball team.
Doing a great job.
So looking forward to see next season for them. Anyway, that's it for us, man. We are going to get out of here. Another great morning drop. You guys know what you need to do. You need to hit up the Rogue Shop. They are great sponsors of the War Report. RogueShop.com. Use code REPORT when you're going over there to get a little something off your purchase. That lets them know that the War Report sent you. We'll be back tonight with the midweek report. So you guys make sure you lock in there. So much more football to talk about, more things going on with the basketball program that we can get into. We will look forward to seeing you on the midweek report tonight. We're out of here, and until the next time, and as always, War Eagle. Peace.